May the Most High God bless all of you, children of God, and welcome. Bishop Nathan Wilson here of the Gnostic Union and of Spiritual Level Wellbeing welcome you where you have a spiritual level of being. Today we're going to be discussing a serious matter. Now, per fan request, as if I am requested to do a subject, I will discuss the subject. This includes on the ancient Gnostic Christian thoughts of intercourse and self-pleasuring. Now, it's important to note within the many vast schools of ancient Christian schools of thought, or ancient Christianites, we had subgroups and different sects. So this meaning that their views on intercourse and self-pleasuring would vary. This was no different to what we now call Gnostic Christianity or esoteric Christianity, as there were subgroups, and thoughts, beliefs, and opinions on intercourse and self-pleasuring would vary. It's important to note that Gnostic Christianity was never one centralized religion, nor placed under the authority of one person, such as the Roman Catholic Church, placing under the authority of the Pope. Now, many Gnostic Christians having a dualistic approach, viewing the material world as corrupt, had different approaches on this subject. Now, some viewed sex or even self-pleasuring as a flaw or defect of the material world. Now, others also viewed intercourse or even self-pleasuring as a means of escaping the material world. So, let's get into this subject. Now, regarding Gnostic Christians that rejected intercourse, procreation, and self-pleasure, they believed by avoiding these things, one could escape the material world and return to the highest plane, the spiritual realm, the pleroma, heaven, or paradise. Now, they believed that procreation was a means of entrapping souls here in the material world and bringing about another cycle of suffering and ignorance, such as their own lifestyle, and they seek to leave this material world in order to return to God. Now, they believed that acts of intercourse or even self-pleasure or even procreation were either defects of the mental world or even entrapments of the archons or the demiurge, or even means of keeping the soul in ignorance. So, Gnostic Christians that had the opposite approach, believing human relationships was a means of a reuniting of souls, the divine masculine and divine feminine, in the form of human relationships. Now, they believed through these loving human relationships, the soul could reunite in the pleroma, paradise, heaven, the highest plane, the spiritual plane, and with God. Now, regarding the Gnostic Christians that believed in the entwining of souls through the act of lovemaking and partnership, they believed that they too would rejoin heaven as one soul, being angels that were androgynous. Now, some Gnostics even viewed the act of lovemaking as a means of worship, or a reflection of the divine masculine and feminine coming together, and also a replication of creation, as so above, so below. Now, some Gnostic Christians and even some Christian sects, such as the Adamites, would also practice orgies, accepted same-sex relationships, though not all, viewing the sacredness of one partnership of male and female. Others also accepted multiple sex partners and rejected marriage. Now, it's important to note that both within Gnostic Christians and also the other Christian group that I mentioned, Adamites, many of which viewed the sacredness of a partnership of one, viewing it as the act of two souls becoming one again. Now, in the case of Adamites, they wanted to replicate Adam and Eve. So, some Gnostic Christians, and this is important now, viewed same-sex relationships as a defect or flaw of the material world. Some did not, viewing whatever relationship you have as love, viewing love as love. Let's move on. Now, within the Gnostic Christian groups that accepted procreation, intercourse, and even self-pleasure, they viewed by breaking material rules made to restrict human beings or even dogmatic rules, one could transcend above the material world, viewing both the material laws and this material world as an illusion to transcend above, and seeking for the soul to experience everything, even sin, to achieve salvation. So having the belief of the soul that seeks experience, as the beliefs within Gnostic Christianity varied. Now let's go discuss some individual Gnostic Christian sects, such as the Valentinians of the 2nd, 3rd century, founded by Valentinius. Now, there were different subgroups of Valentinian Gnosticism, which included different beliefs. This would include their approach and beliefs to intercourse and self-pleasure. Now, many Valentinians were okay with moderate sexuality between the spiritually elect, the spiritually mature, those who were married as well. So, celibacy was praised. Now, it's important to note within Valentinian school of thought, sex is not a way to salvation, it's through gnosis. Now, some Valentinians would have even rejected reproduction, viewing the very act of bringing more souls into this world to suffer. Others viewed it as okay amongst the spiritually mature, so those who were worthy to bring souls into this world because they would guide them. So again, different schools of thought, different approaches. Now let's discuss the Sephian Gnostic Christians of the 1st to 3rd century. Now again, different subgroups, so again having different beliefs, views and approaches when coming to intercourse, procreation and self-pleasure. Now many of which accepted sex within marriage amongst the spiritually mature, not just an act of carnal desire and in turn trapping more souls into the material world, but rather those who are worthy and who in turn would guide the souls they bring in. Now, some believed in sexual freedom, embracing even same-sex relationships, others rejecting that, and believing in the sacredness of just male and female relationships, viewing this act as either two souls rejoining as one, to be rejoined in the pleroma as an androgynous soul, or two separate souls, but as consorts working in union as one. Again, different subgroups, meaning different beliefs. Now, some Sephians did accept same-sex relationships, others rejected same-sex relationships, viewing it as a flaw or defect of the material world and a carnal desire. And again, different subgroups, different beliefs. Now let's discuss the Encratites of the 2nd century, known as the self-controlled. Now, they would reject wine, meat eating, and intercourse and self-pleasure and even marriage. They viewed intercourse or procreation as an act of bringing more souls here in this material world to suffer in a cycle of reincarnation and ignorance. They believed that self-pleasuring was also a flaw and an indulgence that was spiritually harmful. So this sect was a lot more extreme, rejecting intercourse, self-pleasure, and even marriage. Now let's go discuss the Carpocratians, a sect I quite like of the late 1st century to 2nd century, founded by Carpocrates. Now again, this group had different subgroups, meaning they had different beliefs, approaches and views when coming to intercourse, procreation, and self-pleasure. Now, this group was big on equality of men, women, and children, one reason why I like them. Now, they viewed the material world as an illusion, and they viewed many material worldly laws as restrictions for human growth and would in turn act against them. so do the opposite. Now, by doing so, they believed that they could detach from these material restrictions that restricted the soul in order to transcend above them. Now, they believe that the soul must experience all things, including sin, in order to achieve salvation, which is one reason why I also like this group with the soul-seeking experience, in order to transcend above the material plane, in order to be reunited with the one, the monad, to return to paradise, to return to the pleroma. Now, many Carpocratians believed in sexual freedom as well, and also accepted same-sex relationships. Some also rejected same-sex relationships, viewing the sacredness of male-female relationships as two souls being rejoined as one, returning to the heavens or the pleroma as androgynous souls, or again as separate but in union working together as consorts. Now, they believe that sex could also be a means of worship and was in turn enacting two souls coming together as a means of love, and also in replication of creation. So as so above, so below. Now, some only accepted sex amongst the spiritually mature as not to commit to a carnal desire in order to bring a soul into the world to reincarnate and suffer. So one worthy to guide the soul in order to stop the reincarnation process, or to help bring light into this world and reverse the damage done and return the world to its original spiritual state, and in turn bring the soul back to its original spiritual divine purpose, so believing that all souls would return to the pleroma. Now, some Carpocratians also practiced celibacy, believing that through celibacy one could detach from material desires such as lust, and thus also to transcend above the material plane. Now, some Carpocratians even practiced orgies as a means of worship, as again you had different subgroups that had different beliefs. Now, regarding the Manichaeans of the 3rd to 5th century, amongst their spiritually elect, which were their teachers, intercourse, self-pleasure, and procreation was forbidden, believing that these acts were traps in order to entrap human souls in the material world and diminish the light. Now, they in turn didn't want to procreate in order to bring souls into this world in a cycle of reincarnation of suffering and ignorance, and to take away from the light, and thus taking away a soul from the light. They were very dualistic in their beliefs. So let's discuss now the Marcionites of the 2nd century, also having different subgroups after their founder Marcion's death, meaning having different beliefs. Now, Marcion being the first man to compile the first Christian canon. Now, Marcion and the Marcionites believed that the material world was flawed, created by the lesser demiurge, and all things of matter were flawed and corrupt, and this would include bodily indulgences or pleasures. Now, Marcion and the Marcionites believed that procreation was flawed as a means of bringing more souls in this world to suffer and reincarnate in ignorance. Now, this is one reason why marriage was discouraged but not forbidden. Now, the act of self-pleasure would have been seen as a lesser act of the material world, and thus flawed and not an act of the divine, and would be encouraged to transcend above that. Marcion and the Marcionites believed one had to sin to achieve salvation, but despite church propaganda, this does not mean to go out and sin, but rather to transcend above that. So one cannot be saved unless they need saving, is the meaning of this, which many Christians have now also adopted. Some even state that Marcion or the Marcionites could be the beginnings to what eventually became Protestantism. So, very interesting. So God bless all you fantastic miracles, and thank you for joining me here on this discussion. And please like and subscribe and leave your comments in the comment section and share your thoughts, as all this will help the channel grow, as not many will be willing to discuss this sort of subject in great detail. And any request that you have on videos that you want to see discussed, I will eventually discuss them for you, free of charge. Something I enjoy doing. So God bless all of you children of God. Fantastic miracles. Peace, love, blessings, abundance, and lots of gnosis. Bye.